announced, his smile infectious as always. Please welcome former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. The couple walked out hand in hand. Michelle radiant. In a navy blue dress, Barack in his perfectly tailored suit. They waved to the standing ovation, that familiar warmth that had defined their public image for over a decade. Jimmy embraced them both, the camera capturing what seemed like another perfect Tonight Show moment.
Ass.
But as they settled into their chairs, something felt different. Michelle's smile, though genuine, carried an intensity Jimmy had never seen before. Her hands rested on her purse with a protectiveness that caught his attention. So Jimmy began, settling behind his desk with that easy charm. You two have been keeping busy since leaving the White House. Tell us about the latest with the Obama Foundation. Barack leaned forward, launching into their prepared talking points about youth leadership and community engagement. His voice carried that presidential cadence, reassuring and measured. But Jimmy noticed Michelle wasn't participating in her usual way. She nodded and smiled, but her eyes kept drifting to something beyond the cameras. Michelle, Jimmy said, sensing an opening, you've been unusually quiet. It's not like you at all. The audience chuckled, expecting one of Michelle's trademark witty comebacks. Instead, she took a deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than conversation. Jimmy, she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that immediately changed the energy in the studio. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Not even Barack? The laughter died instantly. Barack's head turned toward his wife, confusion and concern flickering across his face. Jimmy's comedian instincts kicked in, ready to lighten the moment, but something in Michelle's eyes stopped him cold. Of course, Jimmy said, his voice dropping to match her tone. What is it? Michelle Obama reached into her purse and pulled out that manila envelope worn at the edges from being handled, carried, and held close for years. The studio was so quiet, you could hear the air conditioning humming. 7 years ago, Michelle began, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I was walking through Chicago's South Side, visiting a school for a Let's Move event, and I saw something that changed my life forever. The camera stayed focused on her face, capturing every micro-expression, every pause that seemed to carry the weight of years. There was a little boy, couldn't have been more than 8 years old, sleeping in a cardboard box behind the school dumpster. It was December, Jimmy. December in Chicago, and this child was alone. Barack's hand instinctively reached for hers. He'd heard pieces of this story over the years, but never like this, never with this intensity. I went over to him, Michelle continued, and when he woke up, he looked at me with these eyes. Jimmy, these ancient, tired eyes that no child should ever have. And you know what he said to me? Jimmy shook his head, completely drawn into her story. He said, Are you here to take me home? Not who are you, or what do you want? He asked if I was there to take him home because home, Jimmy. Home was what he was dreaming about in that cardboard box. The audience was rivaling. Several people in the front row were openly wiping their eyes. That night, Michelle's voice cracked slightly. I went home to the White House, to our beautiful, warm, safe home, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't stop thinking about that little boy and how many more children like him were out there right now tonight, wishing someone would take them home. Jimmy felt his own throat tightening. Behind the cameras, producers who had seen thousands of interviews were reaching for tissues. So, I made myself a promise, Michelle said, opening the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. I promised that little boy, even though he couldn't hear me, that I would find a way to give children like him a real home. She pulled out a worn bank statement, yellowed with age and handling. For 7 years, Jimmy, I've been saving, not foundation. Money, not donation money. My money from book deals, speaking fees, every dollar I could put aside without Barack knowing. Barack's eyes widened. Michelle, what are you talking about? She turned to her husband, tears flowing freely now. Saved $2.3 million, Barack. And tonight on Jimmy's show, I want to announce what I'm going to do with it. The studio was absolutely silent. Jimmy Fallon, the man who filled silence with jokes, with energy, with laughter, sat speechless. I'm building an orphanage, Michelle. said her voice growing stronger with each word. Not just any orphanage, a home. A real home for children who sleep in cardboard boxes, who dream of someone asking if they want to come home. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. The side stage door opened, and a small figure walked out. An 8-year-old boy the same age as the child Michelle had met 7 years ago. But this wasn't a random child actor or a planned segment surprise. This was Marcus Johnson, a boy who had been living in Chicago's foster system for 3 years, bouncing from home to home, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. The same little boy whose story had reached Michelle's foundation just 2 weeks earlier. Marcus walked slowly across the stage, his small frame dwarfed by the bright lights and cameras. He wore a simple white button-down shirt and navy pants, clothes that were clearly borrowed for the occasion. In his hand he carried a single piece of paper. Jimmy stood up instinctively, every host instinct telling him something unscripted and profound was about to happen. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly, kneeling down to Marcus's eye level. "What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied, his voice barely audible over the studio microphones. "Are you Jimmy?" "Yeah, I'm Jimmy." "What do you have there, Marcus?" Marcus looked past Jimmy to Michelle, recognition lighting up his young face. "Mrs. Obama, is that really you?" Michelle Obama, former First Lady of the United States, the woman who had commanded rooms full of world leaders, found herself unable to speak. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Marcus walked over to her chair, and with the innocent boldness that only children possess, handed her the piece of paper. "I wrote this for you," he said simply. With trembling hands, Michelle unfolded the paper. It was a child's drawing, crude but powerful. It showed a big house with multiple windows, stick figures of children playing in a yard, and at the center, a woman who looked remarkably like Michelle, surrounded by smiling children. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for wanting to take us home." The studio erupted, not in applause, but in something deeper. A collective gasp, followed by the sound of 300 people crying simultaneously. Camera operators wiped their eyes while trying to keep their shots steady. Producers in the control room abandoned their positions to watch the monitors through blurred vision. And Jimmy Fallon, America's eternal optimist, the man who found humor in everything, broke down completely. He stood up from his desk, walked over to where Michelle sat with Marcus, and without saying a word, knelt down beside them. His perfectly styled hair, his designer suit, his carefully crafted TV persona, none of it mattered in that moment. Jimmy said, his voice thick with emotion. "How did you know to draw this picture?" Marcus looked up at him with those wise, ancient eyes that Michelle had described. "Because she's been looking for us," he said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Obama has been looking for kids like me for a long time. I can tell." Michelle reached out and gently touched Marcus's face. "How did you know that, sweetheart?" "'Cause you have the same look my first mom had," Marcus replied, small voice carrying a wisdom that silenced the entire studio. "Before she got sick and couldn't take care of me anymore, she used to look at me like you're looking at me right now, like I was worth saving." Barack Obama, who had maintained his composure through 8 years of presidency, through crises and celebrations, found himself openly weeping. He moved from his chair to join his wife and Jimmy on the floor. The three adults surrounding this brave little boy who had just articulated what they all felt but couldn't express. Marcus Barack said softly, "You are worth saving. You're worth everything." Gotcha. But what happened next shocked everyone, including the boy himself. Michelle Obama looked directly into the camera, her face stirred with tears, but her voice strong. "And clear, America," she said. "Meet Marcus Johnson. He's 8 years old. He's been in foster care for 3 years, and he's going to be the first child to move into the Michelle Obama Home for Children." The audience gasped audibly. This wasn't a hypothetical anymore. This wasn't a future plan. This was happening right now. "Live on television, Marcus," Michelle continued, turning back to the boy. "If you want to, if it's okay with you, you're coming home with Barack and me tonight. Then when our home is built, you're going to help me choose which room you want, and you're going to help me welcome other children who need a place to call home." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, his 8-year-old mind trying to process what he just heard. "Really?" he whispered. "You really want to take me home? Really?" Michelle whispered back, pulling him into a hug that lasted several minutes. While the cameras rolled and the audience wept, Jimmy Fallon stood up slowly, wiping his eyes with his sleeve, completely abandoning any pretense of professional composure. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the camera, his voice cracking, "I've been hosting this show for years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened here tonight." He paused, collecting himself, then continued. "Michelle Obama has just announced that she's not only building an orphanage with her own money, but she's also welcoming Marcus into her family tonight. This isn't television anymore. This is love in action." The show ended 20 minutes later than scheduled. No one cared about time slots or commercial breaks. The control room had long since stopped worrying about the technical aspects of television production. As the credits rolled, Marcus sat on Michelle's lap while Barack and Jimmy talked quietly beside them. The boy was examining his drawing, pointing out details to his new mother. "Mrs. Obama," he said seriously, "in my picture, I made the house really big. Is that okay, Marcus?" Michelle replied, smoothing his hair. "It's perfect because we're going to need lots of room for all your new brothers and sisters." Behind the scenes, something remarkable was happening. The show's switchboard was lighting up with calls from viewers wanting to donate, to volunteer, to help. Social media was exploding with offers of support, construction help, and most importantly, stories from other children in similar situations. But this is the moment that defined everything. As the studio emptied and the lights dimmed, Jimmy Fallon made a decision that would change his life forever. He approached Michelle and Barack, who were preparing to leave with Marcus. He said quietly, "I want to help. Not just with money, though I'll contribute whatever I can. I want to be part of this. I want to help you build this home." Michelle looked at him with the same intensity she'd shown throughout the evening. "Jimmy, are you sure this isn't a publicity opportunity? This is real life, real children, real responsibility." Jimmy nodded without hesitation. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. What happened here tonight? What Marcus did? What you did, it reminded me why I got into entertainment in the first place. To connect with people, to make a difference. I want to help you take kids home." 3 months later, ground was broken on the Michelle Obama Home for Children in Chicago's South Side. The facility, designed to house 50 children, would be more than an orphanage. It would be a community complete with educational facilities, recreational areas, and most importantly, loving staff dedicated to treating each child as family. Marcus Johnson, now permanently part of the Obama family, attended the groundbreaking ceremony. He wore a small hard hat that Jimmy had specially made for him. And when it came time to break ground, he was the first to put his shovel in the earth. "This is where other kids like me are going to come home," he told the gathered crowd of reporters and supporters. "Mrs. Obama promised, and she keeps her promises." Jimmy Fallon was there too, officially announced as the home's first celebrity ambassador and fundraising chair. His foundation, established the week after the show aired, had already raised an additional $5 million for the project. But the most powerful moment of the groundbreaking ceremony came when Michelle was asked why she had kept her savings secret for so long. "Because," she said, looking down at Marcus, who stood beside her, "some promises are too important to risk on other people's opinions. I made a promise to a little boy in a cardboard box 7 years ago, and to Marcus, and to every child who's ever fallen asleep, wishing someone would take them home. Some promises you keep with your heart, not your voice." 1 year later, the Michelle Obama Home for Children opened its doors. 50 children, ranging in age from 5 to 17, moved into their new home. Each child was given their own room, decorated according to their preferences, and most importantly, their own key. "Everyone deserves a key to their own home," Michelle explained. During the opening ceremony, that key represents belonging, safety, and love. Marcus, now 9 years old and thriving in his new school, was asked to cut the ribbon. As he made the ceremonial cut, he turned to the cameras and said something that would be quoted in newspapers and social media for months afterward. "Thank you for helping Mrs. Obama keep her promise," he said. "Now other kids don't have to sleep in boxes anymore. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon now features a monthly segment called Home Stories, where children from the Michelle Obama Home for Children appear on the show to share their experiences and dreams. It has become the show's most watched recurring segment, not because of celebrity guests or comedy sketches, but because of the raw, honest voices of children who found their way home. And every month on the anniversary of that unforgettable episode, Jimmy Fallon receives the same text message from Marcus. "Thank you for crying with me.
That's when I knew you really cared."
The lesson that 8-year-old Marcus taught a television studio, a former first lady, and millions of viewers is beautifully simple. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is make a promise and keep it, especially when it's a promise to take someone home. Michelle Obama learned that night that 7 years of secret saving wasn't just about money. It was about faith, about believing that the right moment would come to turn a promise into action. And when that moment arrived, it came, in the form of a brave little boy who wasn't afraid to ask if someone really wanted to take him home. The manila envelope that Michelle carried for 7 years is now framed in the main hallway of the Michelle Obama Home for Children. Next to it hangs Marcus's original drawing, the one that showed a house full of children and a woman who looked like hope. In Jimmy Fallon, he learned that sometimes the most important moments in television happen when you stop trying to entertain and start trying to love. The night Marcus walked onto his stage, Jimmy discovered that laughter is powerful, but tears, shared tears over something beautiful and real, can change the world. Today, the Michelle Obama Home for Children is home to 47 children who were once like Marcus, sleeping in cardboard boxes or bouncing between temporary homes. Each child has their own key, their own room, and most importantly, their own family. Because that's what Michelle Obama built. It's not just an orphanage, but a family large enough to hold every child who needs to come home. The promise Michelle made 7 years ago to a little boy behind a dumpster has grown into something bigger than she ever imagined. It has become a promise that America made to its children that every child deserves a home, a key, and someone who will never stop looking for them when they're lost. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months after the home opened, Jimmy received a call that would test everything they had built. It was 2 a.m., and Marcus was on the other line crying. "Jimmy," the boy's voice trembled through the phone. "I had the nightmare. Again, the one where I'm back in the box and nobody comes to find me?" Without hesitation, Jimmy drove to the Obama residence. He found Marcus sitting in the kitchen with Michelle, both of them sharing hot chocolate and quiet conversation. When Marcus saw Jimmy, he ran into his arms. "You came," Marcus whispered. "Even though it's nighttime, you came." "Marcus," Jimmy said, kneeling down to meet the boy's eyes, "that's what family does, show up, especially in the dark times." That night, the three of them made a pact. Every child who came to the home would have Jimmy's personal number, Michelle's promise, and most importantly, the absolute certainty that they would never be alone again. Today, Marcus is 11 years old, speaks at conferences about child welfare, always ending his speeches with the same words. "Mrs. Obama didn't just build us a home. She built us a family that knows how to find each other, even in the dark." The Tonight Show segment that started it all has been viewed over 500 million times worldwide. But more importantly, it has inspired 23 similar homes to be built across America, each one carrying Marcus's drawing as their symbol of hope. And every Christmas morning, Jimmy Fallon wakes up to the same tradition. Breakfast at the Michelle Obama Home for Children, where 47 kids call him Uncle Jimmy, and where the laughter is real, the tears are healing. And every single child has a key to their own room and a place in a family that will never let them go. The manila envelope that started it all still sits in its frame. But now it's accompanied by 47 other envelopes, each containing a letter from a child to the woman who proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is turn a secret promise into a public miracle. Share this story. Make sure it's never forgotten, because sometimes a promise made in secret becomes a promise that changes everything. Sometimes all it takes is one brave little boy asking if someone really wants to take him home to remind us that love, real love, always finds a way to multiply and return to those who give it freely.